Hi, you guys.
What is up, family?
Oh, listen, this conversation and this episode, yes, it's probably going to be our favorite, as we're hoping that it's yours. But it's crazy because last night, for like hours,
It was about 3 hours.
it was a really long time. We actually foreshadowed the conversation that we're having today by actually engaging in communication.
Yeah.
So this episode is one of the episodes that, makes it to divorce court because a lot of people actually do get divorced because of lack of communication. And it's not even necessarily communication. Get it together. It's not communication, it's comprehension and it's understanding. And I think that that is the biggest issue within relationships, marriages, and whether it's platonic or intimate, people just have an issue accepting another way to communicate or another way to actually facilitate conversation. And I've noticed that being a New Yorker living in the South, y'all are not used to having conversations at the same time. And in
No.
New York, we can literally be all talking at once and we hear what everybody's saying, we comment on what everybody's saying, and it just sounds like y'all ain't even like one person has to talk in the South and while everybody listens, and then the next person talks and then everybody listens.
Yeah.
And in New York, it's like, nah, we're both saying the same thing at the same time. And then we're like, yes, girl, I know. And then all you hear is just like clicking.
Nah.
And that don't roll in the
It
South.
take us a little time to process.
Right. And I realize that people sometimes have difficulty accepting other ways of communication.
Yeah.
So rather than just learn that communication curve, they shut down or
Yep.
they feel attacked. And that when someone feels attacked in something that they utilize every day, because we all communicate every single day, then it causes people to shut down. And it's easier for you to forget a relationship or move away from a marriage, or become complacent and stagnant within a relationship or marriage when you are not understanding that y'all just have a difference of delivery and communication. That doesn't mean y'all not speak the same language. It just means that you have to kind of pivot your, receiving mode and your input and output.
Right.
And people don't want to do that.
Yeah. I think it's important that people learn how to effectively communicate.
Yes.
Because like you said, it's so much more than just I'm speaking and that person is speaking. There's
Right.
so many different styles, tones, delivery, cadence, all of those things play a factor. So for us, we see it as something that's like it's a tool.
Yeah.
We use communication as a tool because it if you use it correctly, it fixes fixes things in your partner that you didn't necessarily know needed to be fixed.
Yeah.
Just your conversation alone could be, somebody's antidote.
Yes.
So it's very important that you learn how to take a step back and not necessarily get your point across or just listen to
Right.
respond or listen to react,
Right.
but actually listen to comprehend and understand. And just me now, I'm going through this learning curve of effective communication because I just want to be a better speaker for myself. And, understanding somebody's point of view
Yeah.
is big when you want to effectively communicate, because if
Yeah.
after they're done, after a couple phrases, or they've gone for maybe 10 minutes talking, if you can regurgitate back to them like in a summary cliff note type of way, what they said,
Yeah.
that would increase your level of communication,
Yeah.
and it will increase your relationship with that person.
Yes.
They can trust you with information because they're like, wow, this person comprehends what I said so much that they can summarize and push this conversation along a little bit further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a skill set. That's a learned skill set, because I don't think that in school, especially, we are not taught to communicate well. We are taught to be receivers. We are taught to listen to instructions, sit down, be quiet,
Right.
and look at the teacher teach. We are not allowed to challenge the teacher. We are not allowed to ask questions out of turn. Like, we have to raise our hand to get permission to speak.
Yeah.
That's also the same narrative at work. It's also the same narrative in church if you're religious. So
Right.
you go through all of these pendulums where you are taught that communication only happens when you are allowed, when you are, told to do things a certain way, or given the permission to do it and express it in a certain way. And I just think that that's like a little bit primitive because it's like, why do you feel like I have to, everything, the stage has to be set a certain way, or things have to go a certain way in order for me to be able to fully express who I am and what I have to say? And we take that same mindset, you know, that we've learned in schools and all of that into our relationships, and then we wonder why, you know, we're not effective communicators, because you didn't learn and enhance that skill set. So there is a story that came to mind this morning as I was preparing for the podcast, and I thought about Love and Basketball. If you have not seen that movie and you are of colored skin, shame on you. Okay,
give me that black card.
You know, I don't say you have to like it, but you should have seen the movie at least at one point in time in your life. So, Love and Basketball, there is an iconic scene when Monica, played by Sanaa Lathan, gets mouthy with her mom. And in the scene, she had came back from school because she had, you know, a game. And she didn't do well in the game, and she wanted to vent to her dad about it. And she went home, and daddy wasn't there, her mom was. So she decided in that moment that she was just going to talk to her mom, and her mom's response to her, which triggered Sanaa Lathan, was, you know, it's just a game. And she turned around, she was like, what? And she said, it's just a game. You always get this energy and this look in your face when you lose a game. And she was like, it's just a game. And I realized that that was the first step of them not being on the same page when it came to communication. Because what the mom was saying wasn't to tell Sanaya or Monica not to care. It was just letting you know, like, there's always another option, like there is another game coming up. So don't get stuck on this one. Improve, digest it, and move on. And she just didn't want her to stay in her feelings too moment and cause that to really affect the rest of her day. So she was coming from a mom standpoint, but because of how she delivered it, she was triggered. Monica was triggered. So then Monica responded and was like, I'll just come back later when dad's here, because she was already upset that she lost the game. So sometimes communication will cause you to say things out of turn and cause offense when you're just trying to bring clarity. So you also have to learn time and place within the skill set of proper communication. And the second part of that scene that stood out to me, even when I first saw it, before I learned the skill set of communication, like 3 years ago, was when Monica, being she, was talking about one of the moments that stuck with her, a core memory. And she said, I remember this one time, and then she started going off on her mom because, you know, she was triggered. So she let her know, like, I'm about to tell you about yourself. You want to always talk about how I missed it. I'm going to tell you where you missed it. And in this particular example that she gave, it stuck with her because it made her realize how weak her mom was, or at least in her opinion. And she said, I don't know, you know, what, like she said, she started off saying, Mom, you've never stood up for yourself. She said, I remember this one time you and Dad must have got your communication signals mixed up. The fact that I know this word for word is insane.
I'm like just blown away right now.
Listen, I've seen this movie enough. And she said, you and Dad must have got your communication wires mixed up because you were making dinner that you had slaved over for a really long time, and he came in with pizza. And it was just like a moment because I saw the mom, I forget her name, but her character was just like, what? And it was not like that's what you classify me as being weak or not standing up for myself. And I'm like, that just goes to show how different people perceive communication styles between married couples. So now your kids are perceiving something differently because you're not doing a good job of showing the skill set of communication. So the nature of that situation, yes, was they weren't communicating, but there was probably something underlying in that moment that Monica didn't know. And the fact that she brought it up, I'm sure that the mom was like, wow, okay, well, I remember that circumstance too, but there was so much wrapped around it that little moment was so magnified to you and it was so small to me. But in that example that she gave, you know, there are a lot of times as a wife where we will make a decision and we'll say, we're gonna make this. And then daddy comes in and won't know what's going on, or husband comes home and doesn't know what's going on, and he'll start to do something else. And around the topic of dinner, you know, food is how most women, especially in a family structure, express themselves. And when you come in as a man, you bring in pizza. It's not about the fact that you try to help. It's the fact that you entered into a space that wasn't even for you. Like, this is my love language. This is how I show at the end of the day that I love my family.
Right.
And when you come in, it's like you're trying to swoop in and play Captain Save-A-Ho. Like, nobody asked you to come in and do that.
Right.
So I get what you're doing, and that's where communication comes in, guys, because that husband is probably not trying to be malicious. But because of our heart and our love language of wanting to serve our family, feed our family, nurture our family, because that's our DNA as women, we're nurturers by primitive nature, you know, and when we are stifled in that primitive nature of nurture by another man who is solution based, who's like, I see that my wife is tired, and especially a good man, you know, I see that my wife is tired. I see that she's exhausted. She's been going all week. I know she's been home. She had a doctor's appointment. She had to run the kids around. I'm gonna just go grab a pizza. So this is one less thing she has to worry about today. And out of his kind gesture in bringing the pizza, the woman didn't perceive it that way, because it's like, I already made dinner. I done sat in here. I slaved over all this food. I done made your favorite from scratch. You know, I had all this stuff marinated for this whole day, and I came back and da-da-da-da. And it's like, the lack of communication came in from the fact that one person was trying to be there and show, like, I care, I see you on one side, and then the other one was taking it offensively because communication wires were crossed.
Right.
Nobody came and clarified that moment, like, hey, I'm cooking this tonight. Do you want this, or do you want something else? Or, hey, babe, I know that you've had a long week. You know, you had a lot going on today. I just wanted to get pizza. Is that okay?
Right. I will say that happened a lot back when we were still forming our communication models.
Yeah.
And getting on one accord.
Yeah.
I operated out of assumption so much.
Yeah. Most men do, though.
Yeah, because we try to just intercept, and we try to do that good guy thing and, you know, beat you to the punch, or, like, again, we assume. We just like, oh, this is the best solution for this problem.
But that's because y'all are resolution based.
Right.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's your skill set.
And from a Southern guy like me, you know, giving that kind of comes in our love language.
Yeah.
It's like we can't really communicate with our words, so let me show you through action.
Yeah.
And yeah, me and you butt heads a lot on that, because I was over assuming that this is what she wants. This is what she's trying to, you know, this is what she needs fulfilled. And most of the time, it had nothing to do with what I was trying to do. It was just lack of presence or lack of attention to those little things, like you said, like you were running around or something like that, and it just went over my head.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we got to get it together and really listen to our women. And ladies, it helps if you can give us some clues.
Right.
Like, I really commend you, because I've never had anybody as a partner that, like, really held up the mirror to me about, like, who I was, how I operate. Like, you really studied me, so you were able to speak on things, and I didn't take it offensive. Not
After I healed my delivery,
right?
Because my tone was bad for a little while.
It was a little rough. A lot of rough around.
I was about to say a little rough. It was bad. It was bad.
I learned how to, you know, eat the meat, spit out the bones.
Yeah.
But you know, now where we are today, it's like we can look at each other.
Yeah.
And it
And
took
I
a lot
love
to
that.
get there.
I love that for us so much.
Bruh, what?
Man, our communication used to be horrible. Like, we were both saying the same things and so stubborn because we wanted the person to agree and change how they were saying it to match exactly how we were saying it, and we're not even the same height. Like, we can't speak the same. We don't come from the same sides of the universe. Like, we grew up in two very parallel things. Like, you grew up in a hick town, like in a slave state, you know, like I was in a free state. So the concept of living and fight or flight that you learned in Georgia is completely different than what I learned in New York, because I didn't have the same target on my back in New York like you did here.
Yeah.
So the only thing that you could resort to was hospitality, because you're a black man in a space where, you know, black folks ain't really like considered out here. So you had to use your charm. You had to assume. And I didn't have that in New York. Like, I was free to use my voice. I was free to express myself, and y'all didn't have that here.
No.
Like, it was sit down, boy.
Right.
And we didn't have that in New York. So coming down here and being able to, you know, be in a new place and try to use my voice and realizing, like, no, you can't be loud here. that we don't do that here.
Yeah.
You know, you have to calm down, and it's like you have to say yes, ma'am. I think that was the hardest learning curve for me.
Really?
Yes, because I came here and my teachers were talking to me, and I was like, okay, yeah. I'm like, yeah, yes. Am I not saying it right? Yes, ma'am. I was like, that sounds very slavish.
Yep.
And they were like, oh, you're not from here? No. They were like, it'll save you if you say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir.
Yeah,
I said,
well.
baby, I'm not from that. That sounds very massa and slave bound.
Yeah.
And because I didn't understand the communication of this space, it took me a really long time to like kind of learn the skill set, because I had to unlearn my environment of New Yorkers that were very headstrong, and Caribbeans, you know, that were very headstrong, and trying to pivot and understand that new communication model was very difficult. And it took me a long time to adjust, because then I turned around and met you. Like the king of Southern charm. And then before you, I dated somebody who was from Decatur.
Oh, right.
Like super Southern charm. And I'm like, you want to open doors? Like, oh my God. And it was just like, because we were so different in how we went about things, it was a very difficult learning curve trying to comprehend, like, Brittany, you can still say what you need to say and get your point across without cursing, without being loud, without shutting people down, without, you know, going below the belt. Like, it would still be received if you were soft in your tone,
Yeah.
but intentional with what you had to say.
Yeah.
And that took me a really, really long time to learn how to be softer. And it wasn't because I had to be loud. It was like, you have dimples. You screaming, you look like a chihuahua. Like, stop it. You have dimples. Nobody's taking you seriously. And I'm like, that is a problem. Like, that's why I was rah-rah, because I'm like, my dimples for a very long time were like a hindrance for me.
Right.
And I'm like, nobody's taking me seriously, because they're like, you're so cute. Like, even sometimes with you, I'll be arguing, you're like, you're just so cute.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I'm not trying to be cute.
I'll be having to look away sometimes. If I make eye contact, it's over.
It just sucks, because it's like, I can't help the fact that I have dimples, but nobody was taking me seriously. So I had to be mean sometimes,
Yeah.
because I'm like, y'all are just looking at me like, oh, look at her trying to be
Right.
mad. Oh, you're mad. Like, I will knock all this over, okay? Like, but you know, sometimes that's just part of understanding the skill set of communication.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, your environment is not conducive to whatever. Like, if you're somebody who is really hard exterior and you're in a soft environment, I'm not telling you to code switch for the environment, but read the room. You know,
Yeah.
understand that you are going to continue to stick out like a sore thumb and be misunderstood, because you're applying characteristics that don't fit the environment. It's not to say that you have to change or you're wrong or whatever. It's just, it's not the time.
Yeah.
Every moment of every day is not the time. And that was the biggest learning curve for me within our communication specifically, because I learned that although I may have been right in what I was saying to you, it wasn't the time for me to say it, because you were already kicked down. You
Yeah.
were already feeling at your lowest. And me reminding you that you're a bum and you're this and you ain't shit and da-da-da-da, like all the things that we say to men when we're upset. It's like he already knows that. You saying it out loud is not any different than what he's already saying in his head. So it's just not the time for that. And this time, just be quiet.
Right.
Just hush. Let God, source, Allah, Buddha, whomever, work in that man.
Yeah.
And be quiet, because the damage that spirit can do is way worse
Right.
than anything your mouth can say.
Right.
And that took me just backing off. And then when I learned how to back off and just let things ride, like, okay, babe, that's fine. And not because I didn't want to say anything, but because it wasn't the time. And if the time presented itself later and I still had those same emotions, then I said it, because I'm like, it's on my heart to be said.
Yeah.
But if time passed, and I'm not talking about days, it started off as days where we had to come back to our communication, but we got so good in having hard conversations that we would literally, the offense would happen on minute 1, minute 2, we were discussing it.
Right.
Period. Like, that's where we
Yeah.
are now.
We have a rule. We do not let things fester.
Right.
We don't go to bed angry at each other. We
Right.
make sure that we kiss before bed to, you know, just solidify, like, nah, like,
Yeah.
you can't be mad.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, learning things like that really help. And now what we do, like, we got a mantra, is facts over feelings.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we're communicating, our emotions communicate for us.
Yes.
It's just a natural response. You human,
Yes.
you want to talk from a place, you want to talk from your heart. But your heart is blind. It's in a place that can't see.
Yeah.
Compared to where facts are they go through filters, they go through deliberation in your mind, where you can like really see things playing out. So argue, or not argue, but discuss the facts.
Right.
And ladies, I know that you have a lot that you want to say.
Yeah.
There's a point that you're trying to get to, and the emotions sometimes overshadow the facts.
Right.
So I promise you, if you can speak to your man or your partner, your spouse, whatever the case may be, if you can speak to them from a calm tone and just discuss facts, you will still get that same message and your mission across.
Right.
Without, bringing that person down, making them shut down. It'll leave a seed with them.
Yeah.
Because they still may not like the truth. Nobody likes hearing the truth, especially when they did wrong.
Right.
But if you can take all of the fluff, aka the emotion, out of it, and just speak to them from a place like, this is me just observing what went wrong. Here are the facts about it. Here's a suggestion about how you can go about it the next time.
Right.
Then it'll be received a whole lot better, and you'll be more approachable from that person. You'll be more received by that person.
Yeah.
They'll listen to you more because they're like, wow, this person actually has a genuine interest in me, where they're able to not allow their emotions to overshadow what they're trying to communicate to me.
Right.
And you can pick up things like that.
And to even deepen that, so if y'all haven't figured out by now, I'm the root person. I am that friend or that person or that confidant that if you got an issue on the surface, I'm going to challenge you to go to the root. Find out where that came from.
Right.
So when it comes to changing your communication, as far as women talking in facts over feelings, what we mean by that is men are not led with feelings up front. Men do not resort to feelings up front.
Yeah.
What they do instead is focus on a resolution, a solution. How do I fix this as quickly as possible? And when you do that, what happens is you start talking to them in a way that they can understand, in a way that they can receive. Because if you're coming to them with facts, aka the resolution of, this is where you messed up, this is where you missed it, this is what you did, and that's it. I'm not telling you that it made me upset. I'm not telling you anything about how I feel. When you just bring to him his portion of the miscommunication, of the offense, then he's able to dissect that because you've given him what he did in exactly his receiving mode.
Right.
So just take it to a nerd level. When you have a cell phone jack, like if you have a new iPhone, it does not have the same earphone jack as the old iPhones do. It has a square jack rather than the little circle one. So when you do that, when you're trying to stick in that circle into a square or vice versa, it's not going to be received because that compartment wasn't created for it. So when you're talking to a man, you have to talk to them with the facts and the resolution, simply because that's how they're receiving. That's just how they're primitively and DNA deeply made.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that they can't handle your emotions, but when you're already bringing them a hard conversation, their first instinct is to shut down because they know, just as a man, based on what they've seen on TV, oh man, here she go. And that's just innate. It doesn't matter if it's a black man, a white man, a Hispanic man, Asian man. It does not matter. The first moment of a woman saying, babe, we need to talk, in his mind, he's already like, ooh, subconsciously. Yep. Now, y'all may have a different relationship. Right. It's like now consciously, he may be like, oh, okay, let's just talk. I know I didn't do anything wrong. Like, he doesn't immediately on the surface take the guilt trip route or the victim route. But subconsciously, he kind of like recluses. Everybody does. When a man comes to us and said, oh, we need to talk, as a woman, I'm like, what's the matter? What's going on? What do we need to talk about? Because when you say those words, it triggers something in us as humans. So when you present the information to a man who receives on a solution-based scale in a receiving mode, then you understand like, oh, okay, so he's going to hear what I'm saying. And then he's going to say, wow, I didn't realize, and hopefully he says, I shouldn't assume, but hopefully he'll say, I didn't realize that was an issue for you. And I'm sorry that made you feel a way. Now, once he acknowledges that he understands his actions and it caused you to have feelings towards it, now you can express your feelings. Yes, that made me feel blah, blah, blah. Because now that he understands what the problem is, now you can let him know how that problem made me feel.
Yeah.
And that's you perfecting that communication skill set. It's meeting people where they are in their communication receiving style. And then from there, inserting your character and letting them know, hey, now that we've gotten the icebreaker out the way, because I gave it to you on the platter that you could digest, now I'm going to tell you how I feel.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to change my tone because I don't want you to shut down and not hear my feelings, because you need to know how I feel. But first, I want to give you the facts. I want you to know where you missed it and what I observed in you missing it from this perspective.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to tell you how that perspective had emotional repercussions.
Right.
That's how you get
Sheesh.
through communication with your spouse. Period.
Mm.
Yeah, mic drop. I just gave y'all the blueprint. And I'm not saying that our way is perfect. I never want anybody to feel like what we're saying is bond and it will work for everybody. I'm not saying that our way, this podcast, or anything that we showcase publicly on social media is the way. But it is a very different way than what we have seen in movies, what our parents have shown us, society. Like, there are so many different ways to communicate. And I feel like, when we all just take a moment to explore the different communication ways and models, like, we have so many different ways to communicate with each other now: phone, video, social media, mail, like snail mail, like they're planes. We can go see each other from one side of the world to another. Like, there are so many different ways to communicate through different mediums that are technological. But from mouth to mouth, person to person, y'all act like y'all can't apply that same difference.
No, it's because it's been so many different mediums that allow people to communicate that they've taken shortcuts on face-to-face communication.
Yes.
It's a skill that's lost, which is crazy because it used to be the dominating skill set.
Yeah, the only one.
Because that was the only model.
Yeah.
And now that we have all of these conveniences that, create these shortcuts for us.
Yes.
We have emojis that speak whole sentences for us
Right.
now. So we have to dial in, if anything, with our partner,
Right.
and be on one accord with, this is our communication style. This is how at least we're going to communicate with
Right.
each other. Because if anybody needs an understanding of me, it needs to be you.
Right.
So I can't not listen to you, and you can't not listen to me.
Right.
we got to get through this together, and we stood the test of time because from how we used to communicate to how we communicate now, it's like y'all would look at us like, man, y'all picture perfect, and we're not.
We're really
not. We just get down to the root of it before it festers into something that creates division within our marriage, or within our children's relationship with us.
Yeah.
Like we don't allow things to fester. That sits inside of you, and because we have an understanding of how things, when it festers spiritually, how it shows itself in this 3D realm, like your stresses can turn into a disease, aka dis-ease.
Right.
So we don't allow those things to fester in our marriage, because that causes so many different things that we're like, that goes against the grain of what we're trying to build.
Yeah. And I think you touched on it when we first started, but I think a lot of that is people not understanding the difference between hearing and listening. And there is a difference between hearing and listening. Like, I heard you. And we do this thing in our tribe where when we're talking, we say heard. Because you can listen to me, like, y'all can be passively listening to a podcast. So there are some people that I'm sure right now are passively listening to this podcast. And what I mean by that is you just press play and you're cleaning your kitchen and you're moving around and you're listening, but you're not hearing. And there is a difference when you're hearing, because when you're hearing, all of your senses are tuned in, locked into what is being received.
Right.
And sometimes when you are listening, you miss things. So there was a situation that happened, and I don't remember the details, but I was talking to my husband, and he was on his phone. And as soon as I got done saying what I need to say, he put his phone down, and he asked me a question after I literally just gave him the answer. And the kids, we were all in a room together, and the kids were like, Dad, she just said that. And you were like, oh, I wasn't listening. Well, we realized that now. Like, you didn't hear me and you weren't listening. So you were at a double negative because he was distracted. And it wasn't that he didn't hear me. He just didn't dissect what I was saying. So he was passively listening. And sometimes when we're having conversations with each other as couples and, just as friends sometimes, we listen to people passively and then we wonder why, like, why are you acting a way towards me? Because I just shared my emotions with you and you didn't even give me the proper response because you weren't hearing me. You did not comprehend and what I was saying. And that's where the problem comes in with those communication signals not being, adapted. Like, you got to hear people. So let people know, oh, I heard you. heard? Did you comprehend what that person is saying? And sometimes people feel like comprehension means that you have to 100% relate to what I'm saying.
Right.
That's not what I'm asking you to do, because you're not going to be able to relate to what I'm saying as a man. You can only understand based on what you know about me, what you know about women, and your, style of receiving and what you were exposed to in your environment. And the analogy that I gave you, what was that, 2 days ago, is very applicable for communication as well. And it's what we know now, what we are exposed to, is literally directly based on your environment. So what we regurgitate as books, because we are walking resources as people, how we communicate, what we share, with the conclusions that we come up with are based on our environment. What is our environment? Our parents, our family, how we were raised. So your parents are your library as you're growing. Your family, whoever raised you, your adoptive parents, your guardians, whatever, wherever your foundation was started in, where you first came, those are your librarians. Okay, that's your library. That's where you get all of your information from. That's where you see communication models. That's where you learn how to love. That's where you learn how to exist as a human being based on the library that you were born into.
Right.
And if that library is not fully stocked with books or information or resources, then you're going to be ill-equipped. And then when you try to take your resources to another person's resource library, their little, mom and pop bookshop, y'all are not going to be able to comprehend each other, because you've been only exposed to sci-fi books.
Right.
And I've been reading biographies.
Yep.
So all of a sudden now we're not on the same communication path, because I grew up in a household where everybody yelled and communicated.
Yeah.
You grew up in a household where, this is a true story. Bay's family is extremely corporate, y'all. Like, when it's time to have hard conversations, it's everybody sit on the couch. We all take turns speaking, and it's mainly one person that speaks, and then everybody else kind of falls in line and is only given the floor for a half a second. And then there's one person that speaks. So it's a facilitator, and then people that can add a note for only a minute or less.
Yeah. And
in my family, how I was raised, how my library was set up is everybody's just screaming. Everybody's getting out their feelings. Nobody's saying facts. This is how you made me feel. I'm the victim. No, I'm the victim.
Yeah.
No, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. It's a constant back and forth where nothing gets established. And everybody just throws up their hands and they're like, you know what? I don't even care anymore. No, nobody was healed. There was no clarity. And then that's my library. But then when you go to Bay's library, it's the same. Nobody understands. Nobody's on the same page. One person got out what they wanted to say, and then everybody's left with the dealing with or accepting what that one person had to say. Nobody else gets their opinion across. Nobody else gets to say anything. And when they do, it's very minimal. And that is still not offering clarity. But we both had that lack of communication structure and resource from our foundational libraries, aka our families, our parents. And then when we came together, we realized that we did not have great communication skills because of both of our environments. So Bay was still trying to do the let's sit down and formally talk. And I'm like, no, we're in the car. We don't have to wait till we get home to sit on the couch and have a dialogue. We're in the car, let's talk now. So his version of communication was time and place. And mine was no, right now. Because that's how I was raised. It was like, if you want to have a screaming match in the middle of public, go have a screaming match in the middle of Publix. That's how I was raised. And it took us a really long time to realize that the books that we had picked up from our libraries when it came to communication was very incorrect. It did not fit us naturally. And I think that is one of the biggest things that couples face and people in relationships face is y'all are so busy trying to hold on to what you picked up from your library, your foundational library, that you can switch out books. You can switch out resources. You are not married to that book. You are not confined or chained to that one way of doing things. That's a way that worked for your family. That's a way that worked for your parents. If screaming and arguing is what worked for them, but it traumatized you, why would you bring that same communication model into your marriage?
Right, because people don't know any better. So I want to touch on that because I did hear this the other day from my boy Myron. Myron Golden.
Listen, Myron, we need you to hop on the show. I know you're going to hear this at some point because somebody's going to send it to you, maybe us. And we want you to really get on the show. And we want you to talk about relationships from your very intellectual mind.
I want him to speak on communication because he teaches on communication being like one of the highest levels of earning and success. But so he touched on the fact that people don't want to learn anymore. Like once you graduate, you do what? You go to school further, or you go get a job from there.
Yeah.
So to raise your level of education, it's going to take more out of you. And for most Americans, it takes a lot out of us because
Yes.
it was force fed to us from like the moment that we can start retaining information.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years old, you stuffed in um,
Go ahead and say it.
a prison.
Go ahead. Yeah,
you
you got
stuck in a prison camp, an educational prison camp,
Yes.
quote unquote educational, right? So from K through 12, and then further, you want to take your education further. You're sit down, read this book, take this test. So for most people, you get burnt out after that.
Yeah.
Once you're working in your job, you get complacent. It's like, finally, all of this is paying off. I can keep this stable job. Whatever. I don't have to increase anything, any further education for myself.
Yeah.
But just like what was it, T-Mobile Fave 5? Like you show me your Fave 5, it shows you a sum of your success and how far you're gonna go just based on those 5 people that you keep around you.
Yeah.
And I'm big in personal development. If y'all haven't picked that up by now, and listening to I want to say his name is Kevin Trudeau. He was a former member of Skull and Bone Society, which was up there with like Illuminati and people like that, those secret societies.
Yeah.
He came out and he kind of wanted to teach for good. And one of the biggest things that they say or that they teach, there's a couple rules when you first come in, but one of the highest ones is who do you listen to? Because who you listen to is going to be a sum of your communication as well.
Yes.
So for us, we make sure that we not only listen to each other so that we can increase our levels of communication and understanding for one another, but it's so that we can continue this further for our children because we recognize we're their resource.
Yes.
We are their direct influence. My son looks at me and stares at me so much he thinks I'm not paying attention, but it kind of makes me nervous because I'm like, wow, this guy is really digesting, my every movement down to my unconscious behaviors.
Yeah.
So I'm very big on what I listen to, and I force myself to continue to listen to people. I don't see it as a chore because I see it as something that's building not only for me, but to help build others. Like this is just ultimately what I want to do with my life. So it would make sense for me to improve in an area where I was lacking. I didn't have that direct influence of a sufficient library. They used the tools that they had, especially during the time frame that they had that most of our parents come from. They didn't really have those resources to continue and further their education from these mentors and people that we can just pull up on YouTube and access.
Yeah.
So, I give them grace up to a point.
Yeah.
But, now being an adult, it's on me.
Yeah.
It is on me, and I don't care if it hurts to sit down and watch an hour and a 30-minute video and take notes.
Yeah.
I get it done. I get it done because once I do it and I listen and I'm comprehending, now I can come on here and help the next man and pay it forward.
Yeah.
Like that's ultimately what we all trying to do is collectively, grow together.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna stifle yourself, if you want to continue to not be stifled, then you have to dial in onto things and people that are in these positions that you want to be in.
Yeah.
You don't have to go back to those same resources in that library that you had and only get your information from your friend circle or from your parents. You can still have those people in your life, but comprehend from people and educate yourself from people that are already in those positions that you are looking to be in. Why take advice from somebody in a position that you don't even want to live your lifestyle in?
Right.
That don't make no sense to me.
Right. And that was one of the biggest teachers for me, is realizing, and this may step on some toes, including, what I'm about to say, but I realized that the marriage that my mom modeled when she married my stepdad and to continue their marriage was not a marriage that I wanted to duplicate.
Right.
And it wasn't because I was upset that wasn't my dad, that she didn't marry my dad, because I would never want my parents to get married because their communication, just as baby mama and baby daddy, was terrible. My dad's communication with everybody was terrible. However, based on their example of how they were never in a unified communication model, and even looking at your parents, like your parents were like the golden marriage to me until I started looking at everybody as just human.
Right.
And I realized that I had been wanting to, even my own grandparents, which are literally like my like I use their marriage to gauge where my marriage is going, because my grandparents, in my opinion, were literally the iconic example of marriage. My grandmother, was the iconic example of a soft, feminine woman that was intentionally standing on her own too. Like, she had that spice of who she was in her heart. Like, she was very, charismatic in her aura, but she was still very soft, very approachable, very loving, very everything that Mother Mary represents. And, even sometimes their communication wasn't really what I gauged. And after realizing that I didn't really like the style of communication from these resources and these libraries around me, I had to unlearn that style of communication. And it was crazy because I was unlearning the style of communication while in the environment. And I had to witness, and you did too, because we lived, at my mom's house for 5 years. Just seeing how me and my mom communicated, which was extremely toxic, and then seeing how my mom communicated with her husband was extremely toxic. It was a lot of unlearning that we were doing, because we realized we were mirroring a library we didn't even want to get out books from. Like, we were never asking them advice about marriage. We would like that. Why? No. We don't want to be there. We don't want to experience what you experience. And it's no shade to people who like yelling in their marriage. If that works for you, fine. And to take it really raunchy, there are some people that like to be choked in their intimate life. And there are some people that are like, we keep it classy. We shower, we pray before we have sex. And everybody's marriage is different. Listen. We don't get down like that. Everybody's marriage is different. But you have to realize that some people's marriage style that they set up does not have to be how you continue to govern your marriage or your relationship. And you can admire, and this is what we tell y'all all the time about our relationship, you can admire aspects of our relationship, but you also have to understand that there are reasons why we are the way that we are. And there are things that had to be done and sacrificed for us to be able to be where we are today. So for a couple to communicate in a yelling way, there were things that they had to sacrifice. They had to sacrifice peace. They had to sacrifice having a soft marriage for whatever reason, because they tried that and it didn't work. Somebody's feelings got hurt. They were vulnerable in a season where their partner wasn't appreciative. So they held up this guard, and now that's what you see. It's not because they don't like each other. It's just because things were happening behind the scenes that you didn't get to see. And that's now become their default way of handling each other. And I don't like that. Like, I don't want to model that. So you have to detach from what you've been exposed to and what you've seen to kind of create your own. And that sometimes can be tricky, because when you look at people from that eye of, that's my family, I love them. And then you start looking at them as humans, because you take away that relation, you take away that common ground, you take away that, love and the emotion, and you just look at them as though you're just a person, like, that I don't know, like you're just I don't like that. And when you have to take away those grace, parameters, and you stop giving them grace and you just look at them as just like another Joe Schmo on the street, it really starts to put into perspective, like, everybody's still learning. Everybody is still figuring out how to coexist with not only their person, but other people. And you have to now dig into your partner to create a communication model and a vibration that aligns with y'all. Stop using other people's example and as this is the foundation of our marriage. This is how we're going to be. Like, we're just here to give you guys a blueprint. Take those details and alter them to fit. We're not asking you to identically mirror our marriage, because y'all may not be able to sacrifice the things that we had to sacrifice to be here. Like, we're not willing to sacrifice our peace to yell at each other in our marriage just to communicate. Some people are willing to do that, but we're not willing to do that. And you have to know your partner well enough to know what they're willing to sacrifice on your behalf and what you're willing to sacrifice on their behalf. And that's how you build your library. That's how you build, your resources together. That's how you start taking accountability for how you communicate, how you respond, or how you react, and how the dynamic of your marriage will continue to go. You can't keep using the excuse, as Bae said, of, well, this is my family and this is all that I know. But now you're an adult.
Right.
And now you have to take that accountability and responsibility to continue a narrative that fits you, that fits where you're going, that fits how you know, want to govern the rest of your life with this person, and how you want to say, you know, I'm proud of us.
Yeah.
Like, I'm proud of what we had to sacrifice and what we had to overcome to be here.
Yeah.
And a lot of people ain't willing to do that.
Yeah. And it's sad.
It is. It is. And we're not asking y'all to be perfect. We're not trying to create a podcast to show like we're so perfect and we don't miss it. We miss it. We miss it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not, you know, oblivious to missing it, and we're not shy to miss it either. Like, we're okay missing it because that lets us know that we're human, you
Right.
know, and you have to understand that grace needs to be a part of the skill set of communication as well, because we're running our own programs. Bay is running his own program in his head right now. I'm running my own program in my head right now. And as you're listening to this, you're running your own program, meaning you're running to-do lists, what you have to do, what your next step is, what you want to say after that. You're running a program in your head. We all have different programs. And when you start running those programs, you start setting expectations and putting things out for people to how they need to show up. And you're in your own world. But you have to learn how to sometimes shut that stuff down so y'all can work together.
Yeah.
And that's just what we're trying to get across to y'all.
Yeah.
You gotta find your rhythm. You gotta find that common ground to be able to make things work. Because going in and out of relationships because of one slight inconvenience, which is probably at the root level a lack of communication and understanding,
Right.
is like, we're too grown. We're too grown to just, you know, bail out on people because you're not understanding me.
Yeah.
What?
Y'all need to water y'all grass.
Correct.
The grass is only going to be green where you water it.
Correct.
It is not just going to be handed to you.
Yeah.
You can have somebody that has all of the ducks in a row, but there's going to be something that comes up.
Yeah.
It has to.
Yeah.
We're humans. We evolve. And in order for us to evolve, obstacles have to be placed in our way.
Yes.
So don't think that there's this one thing that's going to fix all, be all.
Yeah.
Like, our communication, it continues to elevate and evolve, and I actually welcome, you know, the hiccups, or I welcome some of the disagreements, because it helps us understand like where we are in our communication models.
Yeah.
And where we need to tweak, and we just have that understanding. Like, we just have everything that you've heard in this podcast so far. Like, we have that foundation
Yeah.
that we can always fall back on, so we know like it'll never go past or it'll never even get to heightened voices and elevated
Yeah.
voices. We can have a whole, what you would consider an argument or major disagreement. We can whisper.
Yes.
And
Because
still,
we did yesterday.
like, yeah, we in a situation where we can't really elevate. Kids sleep next door. You know, my roommates, aka parents, are still in the crib. So it's,
Yeah.
you know, there's touchy topics that we can't be elevating and screaming at each other about.
Yeah.
How would that look? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
we're in a healed place.
Yeah.
And communication, us evolving our communication together and getting on one accord has been one of our best decisions in our relationship.
Yeah.
It really has. And now we can continue this legacy further.
Yeah.
With our children. They're able to see this conflict resolution
Yeah.
in the same day.
I think that's one of the things that I love for them is that specifically Chaden, he's been around us for almost 10 years. So he's gotten to see 22-year-old us who were very immature, always screaming, with him around, without him around. Like, we were very toxic towards each other and how we communicated. And for him to see how we talk now and him see that resolution, like, he's commented on that. Like, I like how you guys get along. I like how, you know, you communicate, how you resolve. And I remember asking him not too long ago, like, do we do a good job of showing you conflict resolution? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? And he's like, yeah, you guys do a great job. Like, I know when, you know, y'all are having conversations that are a little bit like spicy,
Yeah.
but I don't feel like you guys hate each other or you're mad at each other. It's just like, oh, okay, they're having a conversation, and then, you know, in 5 minutes y'all acting like you're in high school.
Yep.
That's our 9-year-old. Like, we go to him for like critical, like, principal advice.
That's
like,
our sounding board.
for real, like, are we doing this right? And he'll let us know yes or no.
Yeah.
And then our daughter, she's, you know, not as nice in her delivery. She's very cutthroat.
Yeah, she'll tell it how it is.
She'll tell it how it is. She's not gonna sugarcoat and say, yeah, I see the growth. No, mommy, you missed it. you were supposed to be wearing this, and that's why daddy was mad at you, because he didn't like what you had on, and he just didn't want to tell you. And I'm like, what does that have to do with communication?
Dang.
Because he secretly didn't like what you had on, so he was just mad at you for everything. Okay, so that was the root. Like, thank you for letting me know. But yeah, just being able to have kids, I know that this has nothing to do with our kids, but being able to hear our kids' perspective, like that really fresh, hot take on how we are we doing it right? Like, are we being a good example? And they're quick to be like, yes or no, where do you need clarity?
Yeah.
Here. Okay, cool. So we'll let you know when mommy and daddy are talking like this, we're not mad at each other. We just have very intense conversations sometimes because we're passionate about what we're talking about. But we're like 99% of the time, we're not arguing.
Yeah.
We're just having a very serious, like, intense conversation about water.
Right.
Like, it's never an argument. And they've learned how to kind of energetically tell when it's off. And sometimes they'll like distract us by, hey mom, or hey dad, I was playing Fortnite.
Trying to cut in.
Always. And it's like, oh guys, we'll tell them, oh, we're not arguing. We see what you're doing. We're not arguing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then they'll keep talking. Like, they don't even need an answer. They just wanted to, hey.
Right.
Remember, you guys aren't doing that arguing thing anymore.
Hey, I would tell y'all, anybody that gets to meet my wife, if y'all get to having like a serious conversation, just be mindful, like, of your surroundings. Like, I just want you to take just like a scan of the people around, because y'all could be talking about a pencil. My wife is going to be the most passionate speaker. She's going to give you a TED talk about that pencil, that number
Absolutely.
2 pencil. And them hands is going to be gone. The eyebrows will be up. She going to give you all of it. She puts her whole body behind every word.
It's a New York thing.
It's not you. Do not take it personal. It took me a long time to be like, oh, okay, it's not me. This is just how she is. Like, legit.
Bruh. It wasn't until I started looking around and I'm like, why does he keep like nodding and like smiling, like, oh yeah, like fake laughing,
Right.
like I'm not saying anything funny. And then it was like, it took me years to just like scan the room real quick, like still be talking and just look around. I'm like, oh, people think that we're arguing. So then I would start laughing while I'm talking about something serious, so people didn't think like.
Yeah. And the whole restaurant looking at us. I'm
It's
like,
crazy.
It's not me. She talking about her coworker.
You know, like, I'm just from New York. We be passionate about everything. I don't know what that is. It's weird. But that's a community. New Yorkers, Northerners, especially people from Staten Island, please adjust how we speak. We need to collectively have like a reset for the northern parts, because my God.
We did see that stat that the resting volume is a
Yeah.
child's scream.
Yeah.
So I understand why everybody's loud.
Like, Staten Island, man, their community, like those like Staten Island, like Italians, oh my God. Man, they're hard. I think you would walk out the room. Like, they're really hard to talk to. And it's no judgment, and this is so off topic, but it's no judgment. It's just like you're taking it there. Like, y'all saw Jersey Shore. That's light. Like, that's light communication. Now, like true Northern Italians, like New York Italian, oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm good in the South. It'll take me to the West Side where everybody chill.
And it's not bad. They're just very direct. And it's like, if you're not on your P's and Q's, they might make you feel away. Yeah. And it's just, they're not trying to be mean. That's just their delivery. It's very spicy. It's very spicy. And it's not even feelings. It's just delivery is very spicy. It's very like, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to handle it. And that's something that I learned in New York. Like, even teachers. How teachers talk to you in the South versus how they talk to you in the North is real different. And I remember when Tia came down from New York, and she was a teacher in the North, and she came down here, she was like, these kids are soft. Like, that was exactly, she was like, these kids is mad soft. And I'm like, what do you mean? She was like, I can't say anything without one of them crying. She's like, I'm just telling you to sit down. And you sitting here like, you hurt my feelings. And I was like, yeah, so rule of thumb, when you come to the South, you have to call everybody sweetie pie, honey bun, love. That's my new thing. If I don't call you love bug, I don't like you for real. I call hey love, how you doing, love bug? You got to soften that blow, because people in the South, well, how you doing, darling? I'm fine.
Yeah, all of that direct stuff is like, golly, what's up your ass today?
You gotta soften the conversation when you're in the South.
All right, y'all, we just kind of went over.
Sorry.
We got to leave them with some talking points or some takeaways.
Yeah.
Facts over feelings.
Period.
Okay? Take the emotion out of it when you're communicating with anybody. just stick with the facts.
Yeah.
And there's a time and place for emotions.
Yes.
It really is. And you're going to have to find that out for yourself and what that looks like. But if you can start with the facts over emotions, you'll learn how to develop that skill set.
Yeah. Make a little rap out of it. Still Drake's little like melody. Just facts. Just facts.
Right.
Just facts. Just facts.
One thing that I'm doing, fellas, if you want to, here's another thing. Dang, it's all kind of coming back to me.
Hey.
Listen, if you want to live an abundant life, if you want to live a life that gives you more opportunity, you have to increase your vocabulary.
Yes.
Because we use words to think, and if you have a limited vocabulary, it's only but so much that you can think about, right?
Yes.
So increase that. Increase your library bank of words.
Yes.
So that you can eloquently speak and get your points across in a way that is received and not taken for
Granted.
not granted. See, and that's why I'm still working on it. Y'all seeing this live. It's not that I don't know the words. I try to use more selective words for what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So if you hear me stumbling, that's all. I'm just, trying to develop the skill is all.
And I think that's for me though, because when along our like early parts of our relationship, you would say things and I would get offended. And it was because of the filters that I was running it through. And that's another part of your communication skill set. Sometimes, the filters that we run things through will cause us to be offended, and that's not even what the person meant.
Right.
And I think that you spent a lot of time thinking about what you wanted to say based on how you thought I was going to perceive it or could receive it. And you spent a lot of time like, okay, if she asks me, okay, how do I look in this, babe? I can't say, oh, no, don't wear that. Wear this instead. If I say that, she may take that as I'm calling her fat or I'm saying she's ugly. So you had to spend a lot of time like, okay, how can I say this? So you were trying to always find words to say it with the limited vocabulary that you had at the time.
Right.
And I think that like thinking thing became like a habit from a negative experience.
Yeah.
And now it's like, ooh.
Yeah, we overcoming it though.
Yeah, and I think you're doing great, babe. That's why I have you on the podcast. Like, I had to pull Bae onto the in the podcast world because I'm like, if you started to use your voice, like learn the stuff that you're listening to. Like, Bae is very big on personal development. So when you see him in the gym or you see him walking in the grocery store and he has his headphones in, I promise you he's either listening to Myron Golden, he's listening to Joe Dispenza, he's listening to Billy Carson, David, I forgot his last name, I just got put on it, David Bayer. Like, he's listening to somebody talking him through the next steps of what he needs to do, or just hearing information. Sometimes he's listening to trading videos. Like, he's always in this state of being a sponge and learning, and I think that is a space where all of us need to be. We always need to be students and absorb things, because you may not have issues with money, but you hearing about money issues and how to overcome them may help you be able to be a resource to somebody else.
Right.
Because now you understand the principles of what it feels like to not have money, and you can offer it to somebody. Even though you didn't struggle with it, you may encounter somebody that you have to work with or partner with that doesn't have the same mindset about money or investing into that project, because, it's like, well, you weren't really exposed to money. Right. And rather than write you off as, oh, you a broke man, you don't understand. Okay, well, I heard this podcast one time that was talking about these steps. Let me send it to you.
Right.
Or let me give you the cliff notes, which receiving model works best for you. And now you've given them a seed to add to their library based on what you've learned, whether it was for you or not. It was just information that now you can pass on and share. And it also helps you create a conversation, because you want to be in a different place than what you are. You got to talk how they talk.
Right.
So you got to understand their communication model. And it's because of who they listen to.
Right.
What they expose themselves
Y'all
to.
see, man, this is my pupil right here.
I listen
The
and I
student
learn.
became the teacher. I love it.
I just be out here trying, my dude.
And it come with benefits.
I'm so good. I love you.
I love you, baby. Come
You want a kiss? Mwah.
Did you say them?
I did.
She
Mwah.
said it.
We love y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Yeah. By far my favorite.
Yes.
Hands down.
The best. Love y'all.
All right, y'all.
Bye.
Peace.